Welcome, brave souls, to another journey into the darkness. Prepare yourselves for a tale that will make you say W.T.F and send shivers down your spine, then haunt your dreams forever. I have prepared my most macabre, weird, true, freaky story that I can think of to share with you, so brace yourselves, for this story will make your blood run cold and your heart race with dread. Murder on Halloween, the trick-or-treat murder. It was 11 p.m. on Halloween night of 1957 when the doorbell rang at 35-year-old Peter Fabiano's front door. Peter lived on Community Street in Sun Valley, California, with his wife Betty and his stepdaughter Judy. The couple had been married for around 3 years, and Peter was a successful beauty salon owner and a Marine Corps veteran of World War II. They had met while Peter was working at a bar in downtown Los Angeles. At the time, Betty was running a beauty shop, and she suggested Peter to come work with her. They became partners, and their success allowed them to open up a branch store. That night, the couple lay in bed, hesitating on opening up the door to what they presumed was trick-or-treaters. It was Halloween after all, and the couple had spent much of the evening handing out candy to the local children. Betty turned to her husband and said they had no candy left, but Peter was sure they did. Betty later recalled, "Peter insisted that we have a lot. He got a kick out of Halloween." Peter got up out of bed and pulled on his robe and slippers. He approached the front door and swung it open. Betty remained upstairs in bed. She heard her husband laugh and say, "Isn't it a little late for this?" She then heard somebody respond in an angry way, "No." Seconds later, the devastating sound of a gunshot echoed through the family's home. Betty bolted down the stairs and found Peter lying on his back just inside the front door. There was blood seeping through his robe, and he was grabbing his chest. She immediately called for Judy, who ran 2 doors down to the home of Valley Division Police Officer Bud Alper. Peter was immediately rushed to Sun Valley Hospital, where he was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. He had been killed by a small caliber bullet wound that had pierced his heart. Investigators investigated the couple's home and began their inquiry. They suspected that the killer must have been dressed up in a Halloween outfit because of the comment Peter made before he was fatally shot. One of the first points of action for investigators was to try and establish a motive. They were perplexed by the seemingly random nature of the shooting. By all accounts, Peter was a well-renowned and well-liked man. Homicide Department Sergeant Charles Stewart commented in the media, "We're doing a lot of legwork and checking into background principles." The case became known as the trick-or-treat shooting in the media, and it gripped the nation, even more so when an arrest was made on the 12th of November. Joan Rebel was a 40-year-old Hollywood divorcee, and she was a freelance photographer and had once worked part-time for Peter at his beauty salon. Investigators connected Rebel to the murder during a routine interviews. She described Peter and Betty as two of my closest friends, but provided an alibi for the night of the murder that turned out to be false. While Rebel claimed to be at home when the murder was being carried out, investigators learned that she borrowed a friend's car that night, and the car matched the description of one seen near Peter and Betty's home. When questioned about this, Rebel admitted to borrowing the car. She claimed she had only driven around 4 miles in the car, but according to the speedometer, she had driven 37 miles. The inconsistency led to Rebel being arrested and charged with Peter's murder. When Betty was informed of the arrest, she didn't seem too surprised. She informed investigators that she and Peter had gone through a rough patch in their marriage. During this tricky time, Betty had become close friends with Rebel. When they got back together, there was one ultimatum from Peter. It was that she needed to end her friendship with Rebel. Peter was never too fond of Rebel, and as Betty recalled, Peter was the only one who had Joan figured out for what she is. We separated because of my friendship with her. Finally, we got back together when I realized that my husband was right. After being charged with murder, Rebel pleaded not guilty. She was ordered to stand trial. Just days later, however, there was another shocking twist in the case when a woman in her 40s came forward to confess to her role in the murder. Goldie Pizer informed investigators that she had been persuaded to kill Peter, whom she had never met, by Rebel, her good friend. As Pizer recalled, Joan told me he was an evil man, that he was mean to his wife, and that he'd threatened Joan. I've always been the kind of person who's faithful to her friends. Joan was my friend. I'd known her for 4 years. I was so worried about her. She kept telling me about Peter, how much he hated her. I couldn't think anymore. She almost had me under a hypnotic spell. I've never hurt anyone, but I'd do anything for a friend. Rebel had confided in Pizer that she wanted to have Peter killed. The two women spoke of various ways the murder could be carried out, by poison or a knife, but ultimately they decided on using a gun. They also settled on Halloween because they could wear a disguise without arousing any suspicions. On the 21st of September 1957, Pizer purchased a .32 caliber revolver, and the two women began plotting their gruesome plan. On Halloween night, Rebel borrowed a friend's car and picked Pizer up at her home. The two women drove over to Peter's home. Rebel stayed inside the parked car as Pizer approached the front door and rang the doorbell. She was carrying the murder weapon in a brown paper bag and disguised in men's clothing and wearing a fat cheek mask. She exchanged a few words with Peter before shooting him once in the chest. Following Pizer's arrest, she came to learn that Rebel had been feeding her lies about Peter. There was no evidence that Peter was abusive. It was simply a scheme to get Pizer to carry out the murder. After Pizer made a full and detailed confession, she said, "I wish I'd called the police. So many times I tried to get her to go to the police and tell them about Peter. I didn't know what kind of woman she really is. I didn't know how cold she could be until today." Pizer also pleaded not guilty to the murder and was ordered to stand trial alongside Rebel. However, on the 11th of March 1958, both Rebel and Pizer changed their plea to guilty and to second-degree murder. They were both sentenced to 5 years to life in prison. In 1998, Pizer passed away in Los Angeles after serving her time. What became of Rebel following her release from prison remains a mystery. Thank you for tuning into this eerie WTF tale. Until next time, stay tuned for more spine-chilling WTF stories. This was Sandra Pink.